When developing apps on iOS, there's one topic that affects every part of iOS development. Just mentioning this topic can make the most experienced developer break into tears, and that's code signing. Code signing determines where our code can run. If you use incorrect code signing, at best, you'll receive an Xcode error, whereas at worst, your app will be rejected and removed from the App Store. The purpose of code signing is to make our devices secure. Our devices are locked down by default. Installing software is a security risk. As more of our life is moved to the phone, all it takes is for one bad actor to expose sensitive personal data to the rest of the world. By incorporating code signing, a device is locked by default and software needs to be authorized by Apple. This also ensures that apps follow Apple's human interface guidelines, creating a consistent user experience. With code signing, we work with both provisioning profiles and certificates. The provisioning profile determines where the app can run. For instance, you might have a profile for just development and another for distribution. You'll learn about profiles later in this course, but you can think of a provisioning profile as a security badge. You use it to, say, open doors. Each profile requires a certificate or cert. A cert is a uniquely digitally signed document. If a profile is a badge, the cert is the unique user. Certs use cryptography to make it unique from other certs, and you can think of a certificate as a watermarking for your provisioning profile. They also contain information identifying you as a developer. We can create profiles and certs in Xcode itself, but we can also create them manually, which we'll do in this demo.
Start off by logging into your bona fide Apple developer account. You'll see that you have two options: certificates, identifiers, and profiles, as well as App Store Connect. You'll see App Store Connect soon enough. For now, just click on the cogwheel. The first thing we'll do is to create a certificate. We'll use this certificate for our provisioning profiles. Click the Create a Certificate button. You can also click the Add button next to the certificate's title. You'll see that we have a lot of options. We want to use the Apple Development Certificate. This allows us to develop for iOS, macOS, tvOS, and watchOS. Click this option. You'll see that you can create a certificate to be used for services as well, and click the Continue button. At this point, we need to upload a signing request. A signing request is information that we are providing to Apple. To create a signing request, open up your Finder. In Applications, open the Utilities folder, then open your Keychain Access. Click the Keychain Access Certificate Assistant and then request a certificate from a certificate authority. You'll be prompted to provide your email address. Also, make sure your certificate is signed to disk. Click Continue and save it on the desktop. Return back to your browser and select your certificate on the desktop. Then click Continue. After a moment, your new cert will be created. Click the Download button to receive a copy of it. Then open the cert and click the Add button. Congrats! You now have your development certificates all set up. Next, you'll need to create another cert, and that just happens to be your upcoming challenge.
In the last episode, you created a certificate for local development. This cert, combined with a provisioning profile, will allow you and others to test your app on a local device. Now you need to create another cert to distribute your app. This will allow you to submit your app to the App Store. Once approved, general users will be able to install your app. Creating a distribution cert is the object of your challenge. Now here's a hint. It's exactly the same as creating a development cert, except you are changing only one of the options. Pause the video now and try it out. And if you get stuck, no worries, I'll walk you through the process.
How'd that go for you? Hopefully you were able to get through it. If not, feel free to follow along with me as I'll walk you through it. Start off by logging into your new Apple developer account. Click the Certificates, Identifiers, and Profiles option. Click the plus sign to create a new cert. From the option list, select Apple Distribution and click Continue. At this point, we need to upload a signing request. In Applications, open the Utilities folder, then open your Keychain Access. Click the Keychain Access Certificate Assistant, and then request a certificate from a certificate authority. You'll be prompted to provide your email address. Also, make sure that the certificate is signed to disk. Click Continue and save it on the desktop. Return back to your browser and select your cert on the desktop. Click Continue. After a moment, your new certificate will be created. Click the Download button to receive a copy of it. Now open the cert and click the Add button. Congratulations! You now have your own distribution certificate created. The next thing you need is a provisioning profile, which we'll cover in the next episode.
In the last 2 episodes, you created 2 certificates, one for distribution and the other for development. These certificates uniquely identify you as the developer of the app, but that's only part of the process. You now need to create a provisioning profile. The provisioning profile also comes in 2 flavors, development and distribution. This determines how the app will function. For development, you can set the environment for iOS, tvOS, or macOS development. For distribution, you have a few other options. Ad hoc distribution allows you to distribute your app outside the App Store. It's really designed for testing. For this to work, you need a device ID for each device that will run the app. You can only register 100 devices to your developer account, which will reset at the end of the year. Once you reach your limit of registered devices, you can't register any more using that developer account. So if you developed an app that was tested on 70 registered devices and started development on a different app with different testers, you can only add 30 new devices. Also note, in time, the app will expire and stop working. They'll need to be re-signed so it's not meant for a long-term distribution strategy. App Store distribution is where Apple hosts the app itself. Submitting an app to the App Store means your app will be reviewed to make sure it adheres to the human interface guidelines, but also to make sure your app meets Apple's quality standards. For instance, if your app crashes during the review, it will be rejected. To learn more, check out Apple's App Store review guidelines covered in an earlier episode. Now, if you plan on distributing via the App Store, you can use TestFlight, which dramatically expands your reach of testers, allowing up to 25 internal testers and 10,000 external testers. Just keep in mind that if you do plan on distributing to external beta users, your app will need to undergo an app review. A developer ID distribution is for software intended to be downloaded outside the Mac App Store. For instance, if you're developing an open source app such as, say, Audacity, you could create a developer ID for the software. This lets macOS know that the software has been verified and is not malware. Joining the Enterprise program allows you to distribute software outside of the App Store. These are for apps that are not meant for the general public. Enterprise distribution is beyond the scope of this course. At this point, we have a certificate which uniquely identifies us as developers. Then we have a provisioning profile that tells us where we can run our app. The profile has just one question. Which app are we talking about? For this, we need to provide an app ID. An app ID represents one or more applications in Apple's ecosystem. It's composed of a team ID and a bundle identifier. When you create a developer account, you are assigned a string of characters, which is your team ID. You can find it in your membership information page in the developer portal. This is the first part of the app ID. The second part is the bundle identifier. This is the reverse domain name string that uniquely identifies the app. You assign this when you create your app. A wildcard ID is when you want to specify more than one app. To do so, you'd put an asterisk at the end of the bundle identifier. Okay, with all that said, let's see this in action in the developer portal.
To get started, we need to create a provisioning profile for local development. Open up the developer portal and head on over to Certificates, Identifiers, and Profiles. We first need to create our app ID. I'm using my own personal account, so I have a lot of existing app IDs. Some of these app IDs can't be deleted because they were submitted to the App Store. Once you submit an app, you'll always have that app in your account, even if you later delete the app in App Store Connect. To create an app ID, click the plus sign. You'll see that there are lots of identifiers. You can check out what they provide. For us, we'll create a new app ID, so click the Continue button. Add a description here. Next, I need to assign my bundle identifier. This needs to be unique and mirrored in my own Xcode project. Finally, I can assign it various capabilities. Later, if you need to add additional capabilities, you can edit your app ID and add them. Just note, you may need to create a new provisioning profile when you do so. When you are done, click the Register button to register your new app ID. Now click Profile. Then click the plus sign to create a new profile. For this profile, you want to create a profile for iOS app development. Select that option and then click the Continue button. Next, select your app ID that you just created and click Continue. You need to provide a certificate. You've already created one which Apple has access to. Select your development cert. The final thing you need to do is register any devices for your app. You do this by entering a device's unique device identifier, or UDID. This is a unique character string that identifies your device. I've linked an article that shows how you can obtain this in the author notes. Once you've selected a device, click Continue to create your profile. Next, give it a descriptive name. Download the profile and launch Xcode. Finally, in Xcode, select your target and then select the Signing and Certificates tag. And then from there, you can now assign your development provisioning profile. At this point, you can now build and run to a device. So what about actually distributing the app? For that, you need a distribution profile, which just happens to be your challenge in the next episode.